What up, fam? We are now live with episode. Oh wow, we're only one, two away from episode 100.
Yeah.
So, guys, like and share this feed on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Yeah, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. um, okay, so we know we started with a praise report. Okay, so Natalie, what is your praise report for the week? What's going on?
Man, so this week I'm so excited because I had someone share with me. It was like, you know what, Natalie, I think you need to go on TikTok. And I was like, I've been there for a little bit and TikTok ain't really feeling me. But I think this is maybe my third week back on TikTok. And they've been feeling a girl. They've been giving the likes and the views and the shares and the responses and the engagement. So I am excited because I finally got on TikTok and I am seeing some traction there. And even when I don't, and I did a video of not seeing traction, that got traction. So I'm excited to be in this new space online and having different eyes see me, because I'm so used to the people that are on Instagram and Facebook and not on Clubhouse no more. Clubhouse don't even be doing the thing. But I'm just excited to be in that new space and just feeling the love. So I'm feeling the love this week from TikTok. Kudos to y'all.
I think what's cool is, and this is something I learned from my mentor, Dr. Jewel. You have to always be ready to pivot with things like that, where you can't always get used to the same way of communication with clients, right? Like, let's say, for example, is the day that Instagram has shut down. How are you reaching your clients? So you want to always make sure that you're always finding various ways to reach your clients. Like for me, sometimes creating content can be very tiresome because I'm on different functions all the time. So it's very, it's something I always have to work on to make sure I am more so intentional about where I post what I do, because people need what you have. And honestly, the Bible says, go into the earth. And I think what happens is we just get so used to staying in one place, not realizing that the world needs what you have, but we don't know what you got. Like we can't work with you and you know what you got. So for me, praise report is we officially had our soft opening that looked like the grand opening. So people don't even know we got some dope stuff planned for our grand opening. But we sold out twice, thankfully, on Saturday, and we booked 2 gigs from the event. So that was cool. So we getting that rip paid. Um, Another thing I think for me, I am excited because I think I talked about it last week. Last Tuesday would have been my going into my 11th year teaching, and the day I would normally go back to work, I got the keys for the event space. So I'm excited about that because I think sometimes you get caught up in like what should be going on versus like, let me live in the moment and be grateful for what I have right now, because sometimes not living in the moment causes you to miss what God has for you. So I'm in a season where I want to get everything God has for me. I want to make sure that I'm in the season, I'm present, because I want to make sure that everything that's destined for me to have, I'm going to have. So this week's episode, so we started a new podcast series about understanding by design. And this week we're talking about designing with intentionality and setting strategic goal setting. So Natalie, from your perspective, what does that mean, setting a strategic goal? What does that mean for you?
Oh, okay. I couldn't come off mute fast enough. It definitely has to do with looking at the big vision, right? And being very strategic in accomplishing that vision. And for me, I do everything with God. So my first thing is like, okay, this is what I see, Lord. How do I get to where I see? Like, what steps along the way do I need to take, or milestones? I say it like that. These goals for me are milestones along the way to getting to that big vision. So the big vision could be becoming $1 million coach. Right now, what strategic steps do I need to take from the beginning to get to that $1 million coaching status? I know one of the steps is getting to the 6 figures, right? That 6-figure year. But before that, there's the 5-figure months or the 4-figure months or whatever the case may be. But having those goals set in between, those milestones set in between, and then creating a plan to get to those goals. And those plans are not just created, out of the sky or whatnot, but it's just being intentional about, this is my end result. how do I work backwards from the end, knowing that I already have this thing, right? Especially infusing that feeling of knowing that I already have $1 million business. How do I set up my my steps to get to this milestone, knowing that this is the end, this is where I'm going to be? And then sitting with God, sitting with, myself, having some time to think about, especially when you've been in the market for a little bit of time, you've actually seen some things implemented, you've implemented some stuff. Now, if you're starting brand new, my suggestion is get with a coach. Get with somebody else who's already done this thing so they can kind of guide you along the way, because there's some basic fundamental things that you do not want to don't want to overlook. You want to be able to make sure, like, what are their pain points? What's your why? Those basic foundational things, you want to have that. But when you have that, I sit with myself and I take the time to plan out the end from the beginning. I'm already this particular person, or I already have this particular thing. All I'm doing now is walking back to what I already know is mine and hitting those milestones along the way. So that's what strategic goal planning looks like for me. Starting with the end and bringing the feeling of how I feel at the end with me in the beginning as I'm planning it forward, or planning it backwards, as we would say in school.
That's really good. For me, I'll give an example since you gave it like your definition. For me, it's so important to plan those goals. So I think about doing like an event, right? So the first thing I do an event is I think about, people already know they come to the event. If they have Chef J on like doing the food, they know it's gonna be good, right? So my thing is to think about, what do I want people to experience per event, based off the budget I have, right? So, but this budget I have, how do I give that wow factor experience? So the first thing I do is I create a menu that makes sense, right? So I can have this, but this don't go with this. Let me change to this. So I'm always processing what goes well with what. And then once I do that, I can make a plan. So I know, for example, if I'm doing a salad bar, right? I know that I have to have my salad dressing, my ingredients. And if I want to make it a grand salad bar, I'll have different different types of lettuce, different toppings. And then once I have that, I know how to create my shopping list. So I'll create the title of the station. I'll list out all my ingredients. So when I go food shopping, before I go food shopping, I check my pantry first. Well, I already have this. I have this. I have this. I need to get this. So I said all that to say is, when you are planning to accomplish a goal, first off, you want to make a list of what is the whole idea. Second thing is, what do I have in house? There's so many times that we go and buy new things, we go invest in new things without checking, what do you have in house? What has God already gifted you with that you don't even have to outsource, right? Because there's some things in business that God has given us gifts to do that we should just start there first, right? Before we do this, invest in that. What has God gifted you in your hands? I think about the scripture when I think it's Elisha or Elijah went to the woman's house and she was preparing a meal for her and her son to die. So he said, fix me a plate first. So let me do the gift first, the tithe first. Give first. The second thing, after you give first, what do you have in your house already? All I have is this pot of oil, this container. Gather everything you need. So first of all, once you see what you have within first, the first thing she did, let me go back to that, right? Before, her goal was just to make a meal for the end of it, and that's it, right? But a lot of times too is coaches will see a bigger vision than you do. So that's why it's good to have coach. I know I'm going all over the place, but it's going to come together, right? So when you start having, the first thing when you create goals is good to, I remember I first learned about goals, right? I didn't just know it. Someone had to really teach me about planning it. Short-term goals, long-term goals, right? Because you need a little vision. So once I got the vision about what a goal is, it was easy for me to then now, okay, so this is how I do this. So now let me practice it, right? So that's what a coach does. Sometimes they give you the vision, or they help you, or they help stretch you. So now my goals start to change, because once Natalie say, Jay, I think you should think about this. We had a conversation about a little earlier about what I should do about a situation. And she said, well, what about you do this, right? Because she's helping me redefine my goals and stretching me as a coach. The second thing is, now I'm starting to see what I have on hand in my house, right? So the guy, the prophet told the lady, what do you have in your house? So she had a pot of oil. So once you start seeing what you have on hand in your house, it's easier to make goals that make sense. There are certain things that we try to go all outside for when what you need, you have on hand, right? Once I see that, when I'm setting my goal, what do I have on hand? Now I can go outside and shop, or I can go outside and connect with others, or I can go inside and network, right? Because so what I have in the house, and then I can go out. But now sometimes I like what I try to do, I never try to go food shop without checking what I have on hand at first. Because next, if my goal is to keep a budget, my budget is messed up because I overspent because I didn't check to see what I needed, right? So when you're doing your goal or your vision, what do you actually need that you already have? Because you start buying stuff that you don't need, right? So once I set the place about, okay, let me be strategic about seeing what I have so I don't overspend, that I don't waste time buying this or this. So now I know what I need. So now I can move on to saying that, okay, now let me outsource. And once I outsource, I can be more strategic in the way I want to go. But the first thing says about SMART goals, Proverbs 16 verse 3 says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. Once you start to commit your plans on paper, like Habakkuk says, you start to realize that, okay, once I commit to it, write it down and clear and commit to it, I can now move freely because now I have an actual plan that will help me accomplish my goal.
Sorry, I'm a little slow today. That is so good. I am like writing, taking notes myself, and I'm writing down what's being said. And I love that you say, what do I want people to experience? Because every time you're in business, people are going to experience you in a certain way. And many times we don't take the time out to say, what do I want people to experience? And I think that's a great part of, especially when you focus in on entrepreneurship, and being a business owner and selling, right? There's going to be a time where you're going to have to sell and you're going to have to exchange services, exchange your service or your product for the value that they have, their money. But you want them to experience a thing, and sitting with that at the end and saying, this is what I want people to experience, not just what do I want people to see? Because usually I'm focused on this visionary over here is focused on what do I want to see, right? But then I should also incorporate, what do I want people to experience? So what do I want people to see, feel, hear? Like, I want the total experience. I want them to have a total experience. And that's one thing I love about how you do it when it comes to food and it comes to entertainment, right? Because you're really entertaining them and feeding them at the same time, right? You give them a whole experience where other people are not focused on the total experience and the total package. People are usually focused on, all right, I'm gonna just focus on the food and whatever happens, happens. But you're thinking about everything in its totality, because the food is the star, but all the other things can amplify it. And I have to now shift my mindset to think about, what are people going to experience? Not just what do I want to see. I don't want to just be in the vision, in the end result, looking and saying, yeah, that looks good, that looks great. And then somebody in my vision is like, this was not what I expected it to be. Like, how do I get to that place of, now that I am planning and goal setting, I'm thinking about every person that's going to experience me on this level. That is so powerful. That takes it to a whole nother level. And and that will take you from that place of, we like to complain about saturated market and everybody's doing what I'm doing. But when you just ask that one simple question, it shifts your mindset, and your goals now become, how do I make it better for the client or the customer? Because when I focus on their needs, my needs are going to get met. When I focus on giving them the best experience that they will. This is why you say it's a Chef J experience. So it's not just Chef J cooking or culinary, right? The whole experience, when you focus on that entire experience and the needs of the people, then you're going to be compensated, because you're going to be able to charge your $1,000 prices. You're going to be able to charge those prices because you're giving people an experience. You're thinking about how they're feeling when they look at something. You're thinking about how they're going to encounter this thing. And all of it, not just the one point of view, it's all around point of view. So I really like that. And I'm going to be incorporating that when I'm goal setting for my business, is how do I want people to experience this event or this situation or this service that I have, and not just about what do I want to see at the end. So that was really good.
I think that's the biggest thing, honestly. And I even too, like when I was thinking about a business name, so I had other names, but then like the Chef J experience is what it is. You're experiencing so many different levels. I think the first thing I think about to my students. So one time my student, they'll say like, they may, I don't want to curse, but they'll say, I did the SHIT, and I'm like, that's not what it is. I said, don't ever refer to food as that, right?
Ooh.
But I learned that from my chefs. Like when you, but that happens so oftentimes too. We just try to rush and get stuff done that you don't realize by cultivating experience. And sometimes, like my experience didn't start out, it was a little jankety, but people have grown with me to see the elevation and growth, right? So even to there were certain kinks that we had on Sunday that it won't happen again, right? So when you really start thinking about really your goal setting, you want to really start figuring out like, how do I want people to see me? And I know sometimes some people say, oh, I don't care what people think about me. No, when it comes to business, your reputation matters, right? Your reputation matters. Like for me, I always have my name on my chef coat. Like there's certain things I have. Even too, we had customized shirts. Like I ordered a heat press in December because I want my students to have the logo of what it is. So everybody is uniformed, right? But it takes time to get there. You want to make sure that you really start, like I think about this, right? People who are your clients have different budgets, right? So the first thing is I think about, let's say if I charge $5.40 for a dinner for two, how many hours this person had to work to pay me? Because some people may make $15 an hour. So how many hours does this person had to work to pay my service? I want to show you I appreciate you by thanking you with giving you the best of what I got. I want to make sure the food is always good. I make sure that we're doing excellence. Like Sunday, I had to keep telling the boys, hey, wipe the tables down, clean this, do this. And it's about training, because what happens once you train people a few times, you don't gotta keep doing, because now the expectation has been laid and the foundation about what it is. But I want to go back to this point right here. Backward design and goal setting is so important. In Luke 14, verse 28, it says, for which of you desires to build a tower, but does not first sit down and count the costs, right? By using the backwards principles, it shows you how to set a goal from not only a financial outcome, but it helps you lead to desired result that you want to make sure that like what you're doing is intentional, right? So for example, is if I call myself a Christian or a believer, right? The first thing I'm looking at is I already know Christ lives in me. So I always represent Christ wherever I go. So it's just not about me doing business to make money. It's about who I'm representing, right? Like for example, the space we have the event space in, it's a area that has been changing and developing into like a really nice neighborhood. It's growing, right? So why would God put me in that area if I'm not supposed to be the light and change it, right? So by having the space, I'm able to really work the community. So I'm counting the cost. So it's not just about me making money, but also how do I impact where I'm at, right? So I desire for what? So I desire to, one, of course, make resources. I also desire to make change, because you can't, as a Christian, I can't come into a space just to make money and not realizing that I'm supposed to make change, right? So oftentimes too, we forget that people are our ministry. Like the whole goal of whatever we do is to impact people. It may be a small impact to you, but it may be a big impact to somebody else. Like what if somebody had nothing to do on Sunday, and the event, they had so much joy, or they met the right connection to get the answer to what they're looking for. So everything I do with the Chef J experience is to help people experience something dope, something amazing. When you come, you'll remember the event. You'll have a delicious meal. You'll make a great connection. So I think it really comes down to, first, before you even start, what do I want people to experience? What's it going to cost me to give value, right? Because you know that everybody has a gift, right? Your gift may be just a smile. You make people feel warm just by your smile. Whatever your gift is, you want to start analyzing that, because you want to make sure that with everything you do every single day, even when you feel good, when you feel bad, you're responsible for the output you put out into the earth. So I want to make sure when it comes to my business, I'm giving everything I have, but it starts with the proper goal setting, starting from the beginning.
Let's go. Start with the end in mind. That's Stephen Covey, not Natalie Lee Martin. I love that you really highlighted the part where the focus is not on the money, right? The focus is on making the impact, and the money is a result of the impact that you're making, right? And I did some research some years ago, and I found out that most business owners get into business to change their world. So they see that there's a problem, and they are so adamant to being the solution to that problem that they become the person or the business owner that is in demand. Zoom started with a problem. He could not connect with his fiance, who was 10 hours away in Japan. She lived 10 hours away from him, and he would have to get on the bullet train to go visit her and see her. This was before, before all that phone stuff and all the other technology that we have today. This was back in early 2000s, I believe. And so he was like, we have to design, or the 90s, late 90s, we have to design something where I can be 10 hours away from her, but still be able to connect with her face to face, that the phone wasn't doing enough. And so he went on this trajectory of finding a way to create Zoom. And before he worked with WebEx, and there was still some integrations that he did not like. And he said, you know what, in 2011, it's time to branch out on my own. And then 2011 to 2020, he was working on the business steadily. Now we know Zoom to hold maybe millions of people at this point. But did you know at one point it was only 10 businesses that could get on Zoom? If they had 11 people, it would crash. And so he worked on that thing over and over, because that was one of his goals. One of his goals was to get more, multiple people, hundreds of people, thousands of people on the platform at the same time. And so he worked his way up to that point, but he had an end goal in mind. And it started with a problem that he personally had, that he said, I'm going to focus on changing my world. I'm going to focus on making this problem not a problem for me and other people that I know have this particular problem. And from that, he created a solution that's $1 billion company right now. We don't realize that the problems that we are having, if we are strategic about it being the thing that's going to ignite us, not the money. Most businesses who start because of money, they're not in business right now. Yeah. Right? The people who start because, I want to make $1 million in my business and that's my goal, they're not in business right now, because money is a terrible master. It doesn't hold you like vision does. It doesn't draw people like vision does. Right? It'll draw people for a little bit. It's the low-hanging fruit. But when you have a vision to change your world and to change other people's worlds, that's where you're going to start seeing the connection, and you're going to start seeing people drawn to you. So I love that you started with changing the world and not focusing so much on the money. But also you tapped in on the resources, right? Looking at what you have in your hand. Yeah. Looking at what you have in your hand and having a conversation with yourself to count the cost. What is this going to cost me? I didn't do that when I started my business, and it was until things were just going all wrong that I had to finally sit down and be like, let me count the cost, because I didn't realize that if I showed up in my business from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. midnight, that will cost me my family. And I wasn't willing to pay that price. So I had to figure out a way to do business within the time frame that I set so that it wouldn't cost me my family. What I realized, it cost me some free time, that I can't no longer just sit around and watch whatever TV show I want to whenever I feel like it, because that's the cost that that's the price that I have to pay to build this thing out. So there were certain things that I was not willing to give up. I wasn't willing to give up family for the business, but I sure enough was willing to give up a couple of friends. I sure was willing to give up a couple of late nights watching TV. There were certain things, but I had to really sit down and count that cost, or else I would have just been going on autopilot. My life was already curated a certain way, and I would have just went on autopilot and continue and try to stuff the business time in between, and all hell broke loose. And I had to really come back, look at, create a plan. That's what I had to do, because I knew I was called to business. I had to create a plan, and the plan had to start with the vision and work backwards from the vision, and asking God, how am I supposed to work this thing out? How am I supposed to do this thing? And as I worked the plan, it's so crazy that God infused other people into the plan. So in my plan, I wanted to hire 3 coaches. I hired 2 so far. Still waiting on the third one. So it's just like all of those things, all of those parts to the pieces, it's not always happening at the time that I think it should happen. And sometimes it does. But because I have a plan for the future, I know exactly when I hit a certain step, all right, we good. Now on to the next step. Now on to the next focus. And it really does involve counting that cost. What am I willing to give up? Because I only have 24 hours in a day. What am I willing to give up in order to replace it with something else that's worth more?
I think that's so good. I want to kind of take a step back because this has everything to do with it. It's one thing to be gifted, but it's another thing to be skilled, right? There are certain times where I know I can cook. I'm gifted to cook, but I had to get the skill set to manage it. And when you start talking about goal setting, one of the parts that you have to include with your goal is time to practice and study, right? So there are a lot of people who are gifted at stuff. They can get on the mic and sing. They can get behind the saute. They can talk and give clarity. But what happens is there's one thing about being skilled, because you may be gifted at doing that, but there's a skill set to lock the deal in. There's a skill set to have longevity. And sometimes you could be gifted, but you don't know how to manage the gift. There's some people who are gifted and you see down the line, their gift was not managed successfully. So they started to actually lose out momentum on building what God had for them. Right. So when Natalie, I think I love how she said that she had to realize what she was willing to give up. So in order to perfect your skill set to really successfully manage your goals, is you have to take time to become skilled. Because once you start to add the gift and the practice skills together, you start to have longevity in business, right? So you got to practice that skill. So even me, for example, is I'm never going to stop practicing updating my setup. I'm always going to find ways to better how I present food, to edit it, and to not really like that. Like even for example, is this last weekend, the setup was good, but I said I want to add something different to it next time. I want to try this next time. Let's try this. Like this was the first time we did it. The second time we did an omelet station, the pancake bar, and it was cool for what it was. But I said, you know what? Let's move this to a different side of the room because we want to make sure that we have the flow of traffic, working out better. So as you start to really grow and develop, you start to see, oh, okay, let me edit this. But when you are planning your goals and really planning for the future, it's good to think about, what does it cost you? Like Natalie said, count the cost. Are you actually studying what you're supposed to do? The Bible says study to show yourself approved. If you don't study to show yourself approved, you'll be doing the same thing. And honestly, sometimes too, with the ever changing market, it's good to be consistent, but it's always good to add something to it. It don't gotta be a lot, but you want to add something that makes sense to you because you want to elevate yourself, right? Like if I would have still been selling dinners today, trust me, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. It's not that I wouldn't have made it far, but I realized that the experiences I've had, I probably wouldn't have had. Right? By becoming a teacher, it taught me how to really properly communicate what I'm trying to say to my students. So now, if you ask me about, how to make a bechamel sauce, I can not only show you, but I can teach you and say it for word, right? And also too, when you're really thinking about your customers or your clients, because you may not have, some people may not have money clients, but you may have internal customers. Like your kids are your customers, right? Your job is, for now, your customers, they're your staff. Like, so when you start realizing that customers are receiving something from you, so how do you want them to receive, right? So you want to align your goals with the customer needs. There's so oftentimes people have these businesses that don't make sense to what their audience represents, right? So first, I want to think about my customers' needs. So in Philippians 2 verse 4, it says, let each of you look not only to your own interest, but to also the interests of others. What's the point of me having a business and I don't have the business that work for others, right? Because they're going to pay for it. You're not paying for your client, for your product. Other people are. So you want to make sure that whatever you're doing is needed. How do I align with their goals? How do I align with their needs? Because oftentimes too, you can be doing so much grand stuff, but if it doesn't apply to your audience, stop, right? I had a conversation with social media with a few different clients, and I was saying like, hey, your content doesn't match your goals. So I get this may be what you want to do, but what you want to do is not making you no money. It's not making you no progress. It's not making you no growth. It's not elevating you. So sometimes too, you can have a really dope plan or a dope goal, But if the math ain't mathing with your goal, stop doing it. It's okay to stop doing something. You're not a failure. You just realize that you had to pivot. Like I always have certain ideas. Like for example, is I don't do sipping paints no more. Like for me, sipping paints is what was big during the pandemic and before that. It's not that it's not relevant to my audience. I just know that I have other stuff. Like I know brunch is my thing. Private dining is my thing. I can add a little sprinkle of stuff in there, but I know my thing, right? So I know that people come for brunch. I know for me, people come for a dining experience. Those are my two main things. And then I have seasonings. And then I have my mentoring pro. Like those are my two things for the Chef J experience, right? So once you start realizing what's needed in that season, focus on what's needed. Like focus on what you need to focus on. I think sometimes too, we be all over the place trying to do this, trying to do that. Let's see if this works. You can see if it worked, but give it a trial basis. I'm only going to try this for 30 days, right? If it doesn't work now, it may be for later. It's good to implement new practices, but know what works for you because it's easier for you to reach your goals. And first of all, before you got to pray about stuff, right? Let me see what God wants me to do. This may be my plan, but it's a saying that says God laughs. We make plans. God laughs at our plans. You know what? Let me consult him after I make this plan. Okay, Holy Spirit, is this what I should be doing now? Give me God, even every day. Like I say, hey, God, Holy Spirit, thank you for helping me to understand better, to open doors of opportunity. Let me be a better person who is welcome to your wisdom, welcome to your guidance, because I don't want to make unnecessary steps because I'm just not listening to what you have for me. The first thing I go is, let me see, Holy Spirit, what do you have for me to receive today? What do you want me to do? Why have you given me this vision? What do you want me to do? Because once you ask the Father, who is your real business coach, that's the first business coach. That's the first life coach. That's the first financial coach is the Holy Spirit. So he will lead you and guide you to all things because let me start there first. Let me say, God, hey, what am I supposed to do today? What do you want me to do with this gift? And once you do that, you'll get amazing clarity and things start to make sense. And guess what? The math will start to math.
The math be mathing when you start with the right person. Listen, y'all heard what that man said. He said, God be the real business coach. He's the first business coach. He's the first financial coach. God, and you said God can bring us to all things and all people. Mm-hmm. And all people. Because what I have learned is that with God is that it's not in the package that you think it's in.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, oh, it's so annoying. You go online or you meet somebody and they're like the $20,000 business coach. And you're like, I know if I connect with this person, I will take my business to the next level. And God is like, no, clearly, because he didn't give you the finances to connect with the $20,000 coach, right? He gave you the finances to connect with the $500 coach. But the $500 coach has something that you need. And God is using your finances as well as he's speaking to you when you sit down and ask to connect you to the right people. Because one thing I was sharing with my community lately, I said, what if God intended for all of us to meet at this particular time because we're going to be a safe place for each other as we become millionaires?
Oh, definitely.
If you look at the millionaires today, a lot of them grew up together. I look at Neo and David Shands and Michael Rossier, and I'm noticing that they all running in the same circles. They got the same people on their podcasts. They got the same, like Ash Cash got the same people on the podcast that Neo got on his podcast now. Yeah. And they all run in that same circle. And when you listen to their story, they've known each other for 5 and 10 and 15 years now. When nobody knew who they were, they knew each other. And so we have to really ask God first because you never know who he's connecting us to. And as you write out your business goals, right? Don't think about what the package is going to look like. When I started with my business goals of, I want to have 3 coaches. I was just telling my coaches that today. I said, I never saw y'all faces. I had 2 other women in mind. I had 2 other people in mind. I was like, I want them. But I was looking at the package. I was looking at the outside. And God was like, you can look all you want to. I'm going to bring you exactly who you need. And these women, when I had the conversation, I was like, man, sometimes it feels like I'm talking to myself, not in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a bad way, because I know the standard and the level that I set for myself behind the scenes, and I expect the people that I work with to do the same. I know how I show up for my clients, and I want
Yeah.
people who I work with to show up for my clients just as I do, or even better. If you
Yeah.
below me, nah, you got to be me or better.
Yeah.
So I love that you said build your business goals around what the people need. That's
Yeah.
one thing I'm really honing in on my community as well as myself to do that, because for too long we have built our business goals around what we needed,
Yeah.
what we wanted. I want this car. I want this, house. I want this. So I'm gonna build it around them, and that's great. That could be a fuel for the pricing, right? I need this car, so I'm gonna price it this way. But when you're building out what the goals, it's like, what do the people need? Because you could find yourself in the market giving something and they don't want it. I found
Mm-hmm.
myself doing that. I was like, I'm going to coach people on trauma. And man, I was in those clubhouse streets and I was talking about trauma, and people came to me and they were like, I don't care about that, but I see how you talk about building your business and how you get clarity when you build your business. I want that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, what? They was like, I don't care about all of this other stuff that you're like, I left my corporate job to go into entrepreneurship, and I see how you're
Mm-hmm.
handling the transition. I want that. Teach me how to be you in the transition. And I was just like, what do you mean? And I had to go back and map out the structure that I put in place for myself in order to maintain stability as I was transitioning. And then I sold that because that's what they kept asking me for. What I wanted to sell, because I was like, I had a traumatic childhood. I can help anybody overcome their traumatic childhood. They was like, we don't care about that. We want how you get over this hump where you don't got no clients in your business and you still showing up every single day. I need that right there. How do you get over this? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, okay. How you want to pay me to teach you how to be me? Okay, that make no sense, but okay. And
But
from
you showed it with something, though.
it
I
did.
think that's when your plans start to change. I
Yes.
think when you are so hooked on one way and never edit yourself,
Yes.
God will put you in something and he'll edit your plan real fast. Okay, you can do that, but watch me switch the rule on you. So I think too, like once you start actually showing up, like the thing about like you talked about the different the guys who are in the community, they showed up. So like minds start to generate. And next you know, once you show up as a light figure, what you need wants you. What you want wants you back. And once you realize that, it's like a magnet, right? Like it's no coincidence that 24 years later we're working on together doing a podcast. Like you know what I'm saying? So like once you back, and once you start realizing that, goals start to become easier because success wants you back, just like you want success. Finances wants you back, just like you want finances. So when you start to think about that, you want to start really even too, like the Bible says in James 1 verse 5, if anyone lacks wisdom, you should ask God who gives generously to those who finding. So when you start to really ask the wisdom, when you start needing connections, hey, I lack connections, let me ask God who gives it generally. Hey, I lack clarity, so this way people who are lacking clarity are naturally drawn to you because you have clarity about what you do. So I think too is like once you just show up in the room and show up and be present, you start to have what you need. You know, like for when I'm in certain rooms, I try to really focus on who's in the room, focus on what's in the room. Like I never thought, like, so we got a really good news yesterday for the event space about who we wanted to have for our grand opening. I didn't know that 2 years ago, this person I was working with, one of their friends would kind of be the connection that I needed for today, right? But I still showed up even with the other situation not being what I wanted to be, even though I showed up and it actually ended a little sour. What if I was just there to make that one connection, right? There's certain things sometimes we're in places where we despise small beginnings. We start really, well, why am I here? Why am I meant for this? You're there for a reason. Just so keep showing up, because the more you show up, God will show out, right? The more you start to practice your goal, even if the goal may be raggedy, practice the goal. And as you move, it will be edited. So, right, you got to start with just, hey, God, like, and I think too, the more humble we are about it, it becomes more easier. Like, I think just like, even if you might not believe in God, whatever you believe in, because everybody is different, right? But I know for me, I'm speaking from a faith point of view. I'm a person that always, I'm a go getter, right? So I just get it. Like I don't be waiting. I'm gonna get it, right? But the faith part of me realizes I have to ask God about, like, God, today give me, and that's why I said to, like, God, say, give me wisdom, show me how to do this, show me the errors of my ways, allow me to perfect the areas that are weaker, let me be a better listener, let me be a better understander, let me find ways to incorporate my team as well too in their thoughts and opinion, not let me have a takeover spirit. Like I have, because I'm used to just getting stuff done, right? It's the truth. I'm used to just getting stuff done, so I have to realize too, God has you in certain places for you to learn certain skills, right? So for me, I am much more open to being humble, being meek, being understanding, being coachable, because some things sometimes we're not, right? Nobody's perfect, but let me see what I need to learn from this space, right? This is a very interesting space, exciting where I'm in now, but I'm also realizing that, hey, like I don't got no income from no job. Okay, so I have to be very intentional about the steps that I make, because I want to make sure it's not about living in fear. Okay, God, you blessed me to be here. So what do you want me to do? How do you want me to make it happen? Because I know how to hustle, but I don't always want to hustle. I'm at a place in my life where my hustle has to be intentional. Where I don't want to always have to hustle to make resources, but to allow my work to be more intentional and to work smarter and not harder. So this way, what I have is already working for me. And that's where I'm at in this phase of my life. I want to make sure I set up goals that make sense, that I can edit and I can improve and I can change it around, try this, see if it works. If not, let me pivot again, because I want to make sure that I experience the fullness that God has for me. The Bible says the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, and they that dwell therein. I have access to a whole world out here. So I'm going to not limit myself. I'm going to think as big as I want. I'm going to live because it's not about money. It's not about like a lack problem. It's about the issue of getting a resource. I never lack. I just find a resource, right? So oftentimes too, we live in lack because we feel like there's no other way out. No. Living in lack is a choice. I choose to live in abundance. So for me, it's not about not having enough money. I just got to get the money I need. It's not about having enough time. I just got to make the time for what I need. It's not about me having enough love. I got to make myself available to receive love. So whatever you need, it's not that you lack it. You have to find a way to get it. So by having intentional goals help you be more intentional about your daily things, because you realize that more intentional you are, you realize that sometimes maybe I'm not receiving this because I spend 2 hours a day talking to negative people, right? So you want to make it make sense for you in your life.
Make it make sense. Listen, you said that whole thing. I was like, I heard your goals ain't big enough. Make it bigger. And that's what the whole purpose of sitting with God and allowing him to expand your mind is so that you can make these goals bigger. Because you need something to draw out the best version of you. And it's not these little small goals that can be accomplished without God, without something outside of yourself. You need to really sit with God, expand your mind, and really gravitate towards something bigger. And starting with the end in mind, having that strategy in place will allow you to say, you know what, I can be bigger, because when it's small, you don't need strategy. You just need these little steps. But when it's big, you need strategy. In order for you to go on Instagram and get 10 likes, you don't really need strategy. You could put it out and if you have 100 people, you could get 10 likes, right? But when you want to get 1,000 people to see your thing, or 10,000 people to see your thing, or 1 million views, that's a whole nother ball game, right? And it's not that people are not doing 1 million views. Every day somebody's getting 1 million views, but they're being very strategic on how they're doing it. And they must be strategic because the goal is big.
Yeah.
And so you were talking and all I heard was make these goals bigger.
Yeah.
If the goals are bigger, then you'll require a strategic plan. Then you'll start looking deeper into your own resources. Then you'll start seeing the things that I actually need, I have in my hand. Then you'll start looking in the place. Then you won't be wasting things. You won't be wasting, my house, we waste food a lot of the times. And we'd be like, oh, we wasting money and da-da-da. That's because we ain't digging deeper. We're comfortable in this, wherever we're at right now. But because God put a demand on me to go bigger, for us not to be in the 6-figure household place, but to be in the 7-figure household place, that means I have to look at the resources that I have and I can't waste it anymore.
That's
I
good.
can't want to go from 6 figures as a household to 7 figures and say, oh, we could just throw away food. Like, nah. And
Mm-hmm.
we automatically, sometimes we think so backwards and have backwards in our thinking instead of our design, right? Our design is from the front forward and our thinking is the backward thinking, that you would think, oh, in order for me to get to the 7 figures, in order for me to get to the next level, I have to get something new. That means in my mind, household wise, I just need more food. I just
Yeah.
need the ability to go out and get more food. I need more something else so I can get more food. And it's just like, no, just don't waste what you have. Just manage the little that you have, because when you start managing the little that you have, you'll start recognizing abundance in every single area of your life.
Good.
And then you can use that abundance to do something else. You can start a food drive, or you can cook for somebody, and that could expand something for somebody else. But I'm not looking inside, I'm looking outside. And we got to start looking within, but that starts with having a much bigger goal. So when you talked, I heard bigger goals, people. They too small.
It's so I remember I went to this conference from my mentor, Dr. Stacia. It was in 2021. And then I was praying for $10,000 days. And literally on my way to that event, $10,000 hit my account at one time. And I was so excited. And then at the event, my mentor was talking about storehouses and how do you expect God to bless you with big and you don't even got enough accounts to hold the big, right? Because I think too, we have these big goals, and I really don't think that we really think about us reaching it and what's the after reach, right? So we talked about the waiting room for the last 2 weeks, about being that waiting room area, maybe 3 weeks, right? And that waiting room area is not forever, right? So at that moment, I amped it up. When she said, I'm like, okay. I said, I want 50,000 in each account that I have. That's what I said, right? But the past like couple of years, I saw a way out, but I knew like the event space is definitely gonna be a way out. I already knew that. That's gonna be a big space for me to really get it out. So I'm out the waiting room. I have that goal accomplished. We have the event space. So now it's time to do the work again. So now it's time to increase my capacity to receive and increase my goals. Okay, that was a goal then, but okay, let me amp it up a little bit. Because I already know if I was able to get, so because you got to think, the goal was to get a space. We have 2 spaces at one. So why am I thinking so small? Because if God already did exceedingly abundantly about the space and gave 2, how do I now make that into, I got to double what I expected to receive, right? Because God always does exceedingly abundantly above all that you can ask or think, right? And I've learned just by being around certain people. Like I remember we was in Phoenix one time. No, we was in Scottsdale doing a gig. And my mentor, Dr. Jewel, she was like, let's go vision casting on mansions. I'm like, oh, okay. Because I never experienced this before, right? So we went literally knocking on people's doors to go inside and see their mansion, right? About 15 Black people. Like, this is already in an area that's not predominantly Black. So people started letting us come into the house to see. I've never experienced it before. So then now, as I'm going to people, because this is their average way of living, the people who own these mansions, right? So I'm like, wow, they're not different from me. They're the same as me. It's nothing different. They're a human being, right? So for me, it's like, okay, let me be more accountable about the opportunities that I have. So now that I'm going there seeing that, I'm like, they're no different from me. They're people, right? And I think sometimes too, we think that we put people on a pedestal because of what they have, when honestly, we have what they need as well too. There's no difference in like even to like when I see people who may be disfortunate, when people don't speak to people like that, that really annoys me. Like we're all one step away from losing our mind. We're all one step away from not being able to have the abilities of our limbs. We're all one step away. So I think if we have an attitude of gratitude and start really going into situations, having that mind so thankful, like God, I thank you that I will be able to give to this space and receive from this space. Reciprocity. Why can't I go into space and receive? It's meant for me to receive. Why can't I go into space and give? It's meant to give. But as you start to realize your goals, God will put you in the right place at the right time. And now that I'm out of the waiting room, now it's time to work, right? When you're out of the goal setting feature and now you're actually applying your goals, now what do I amp it up to now? I'm ready to go. Right. So we have these events planned. I said, okay, Jay, you got to be on it with your flyers. You got to be on it with your promotion. Like I'm about to drop our video today of our event, but I should have had it ready Tuesday, right? So it's okay, but I'm gonna get better at promoting what I need to do, because I have to realize that there's another level that I'm going to. So there's another level of energy required of me. There's another level of anticipation that I have to get to the next level. So listen, as you're setting your goal, know that your goal is attainable, but know that you got to think bigger. You got to dream bigger, because like if he said he'll do exceedingly abundantly, what do you want that to look like? So let me make my dream as far-fetched as I possibly can, because I guess where I know that he's going to add his super to my natural, and it's going to automatically be exceedingly abundantly above all that I can ever ask or think. The Bible says, Jeremiah 29 verse 11, for I know the thoughts and plans I have for you, plans to prosper you. Like, so if I know that these plans are already big, why not dream big? And I think too, sometimes you're around people who, when people say, oh, I don't want to tell this person my dreams, listen, go to a community you can tell your dreams to, and it's a safe space where you know they're going to support you and elevate you and hold you accountable to get it done, right? So once you get to that place, and you'll start seeing it happen. So this, anything to add, Natalie, before I wrap up?
That was it. The last thing you said was sometimes you got to get away from small-minded people in order to expand and dream big. And that's the same thing when you're thinking about a plant that's being potted. It's potted and it's only grown to a certain level. Think about your environment has a big part to do with that. You need to get in a big environment. And I love the fact that you always talk about the millionaires that you're around, and that this millionaire coach took you into millionaire mansions so that you can see they're just like me. They're just like me. And so that's the only thing that I would add to it. And if you want to think bigger, go bigger in your goals, get around people who also think bigger. It will force you to level up, because what you think is super big, that's their normal every day.
And honestly, that's the real case. Like, I've been blessed to see that, and now I'm not around as much because it's time for me to apply what I've learned. You can't always expect to have study guides and never have a test. No one is your season of application. We're in a season of application, applying what you learn. It's time to apply every principle. It's time to apply every word you got, every book you study. Like, after a while, you get tired of just like soaking up information. Like a sponge absorbs stuff, right? So think about, we're all like sponges. Well, I choose to be like a sponge. I'm absorbing with goodness, all information. And now there's certain seasons that I have to squeeze it out. If you never squeeze it out, you never are able to have the impact that you need to clean around the areas, to actually to use what you've been filled with to really manifest and to edify people. So in this season, it's time to start applying what you've learned and to study. You studied, now show yourself approved. You studied it. Now it's time to implement the principles. And this is week 2, of course, of our Understanding by Design podcast month. So listen, if you have any coaching concerns, any questions, reach out to us on our DM. Closed mouths don't get fed. So listen, we here for you. Okay, fam? Open them up and ask for help, right? Don't be the same way you was on September 11th that you're going to be next week. Next week, when you're going to have progress. Tomorrow, we're going to have progress. Friday, we're going to have progress. Saturday, we're going to have progress. So you have to make it be intentional about reaching out to get the progress you need.
Amen.
All right. We'll see y'all next week.